In the past vignettes, we have been speaking about reason and emotions and how left to themselves they become destructive of men and prevents him from seeking God and reaching eternal life. Then we mentioned to you that the only way we can make these two useful for man is to subject them to divine revelation, always making certain that you have divine revelation right. You have it in its totality. Then we began to give you a comparison between a person that acts simply by reason and emotions and a person that is moved and motivated by divine revelation. And we saw that their behavior are opposite to one another. Definitely, one kind of behavior is detestable to man, while the other one is pleasing to God, and oftentimes detestable to man too. Let us go back to the natural man. By his reason, he discovers that he has excellent qualities. His emotion reacts and develops in him self-admiration. Now, this is called productive knowledge. Productive in the sense that his knowledge is producing in him self-admiration. So, in other words, there are forms of knowledge that are productive because there is a realization, meaning to say, he has discovered that he was charming, and therefore he develops self-admiration or pride. But there is another kind of knowledge which is unproductive. And this kind of knowledge is when you have a knowledge, but it does not produce an added knowledge in yourself. An example of this is, for instance, when a person does not realize the truth that he knows. He knows the truth, but he does not realize it. It does not produce fruits within him. A clear example is that all men know that life is short. He knows that. Everybody says so, but they do not realize it. And therefore they go through life as if they would never die. So they have the knowledge that life is short, but they live as if they would never die. There is no preparation whatsoever for death. Most men know the vanity of all the things around us. They know very well that all these things around us are nothing, worthless, vain, especially the moment you die. It is absolutely useless for you. But they don't realize it. So instead of abandoning all these things, they acquire more and more of these things which they have considered as vain. And so you will notice one that is motivated by divine revelation have both kinds of knowledge. He has the productive knowledge, and this knowledge are all things that refer to God. Everything that is pertinent to God is a productive knowledge for him. But these people have also what you call unproductive knowledge, meaning to say that form of knowledge that does not produce anything or any fruit in them. And this is the knowledge they know about themselves. The productive knowledge of the saints and the religious man are all things that pertains to God. But they're also conscious of a knowledge about themselves. Keep in mind they're holy, they're saints. So they know very well there are excellent characteristics in them. They have good points, they have good characters, they have holy characteristics. But everything that pertains to themselves are unproductive knowledge. It does not produce self-admiration in themselves. In fact, they are so unconscious of this knowledge as if this knowledge were absent in them, and so they continue to behave like simple men. Even if they know so much, they behave like simple, uneducated men. And therefore, people around there are amazed. How come these people who know so much behave like people who know so little? Religious men who are guided by divine revelation know very well that people talk about them and praise them, that they are so popular, that they are well known all over the place. But notice, there is no arrogance in their behavior. There is instead humility, and they never despise others because they are popular. Something that is common among people with self-admiration. They always despise other people. And when these truly Christian men talk about themselves, they speak with unaffected tone, with childlike innocence and graceful frankness. Let us give another example of people who know but do not realize. And let's take the example of the natural man again, and one guided by divine revelation. When a natural man, who by the fact he is natural is usually a great sinner, when he recalls his sins, he quivers in fear. He is full of confusion, emotion, and guilt by looking at the past sins that he has committed. In other words, he is affected greatly by the thought of his sins to the point that sometimes he is tempted again by his own past sin. But one who is guided by divine revelation can look at this sin, exactly the same sins. Well, of course, they will be turned off by its grossness, but they are not affected. There is no guilt feeling, there is no confusion, there is no temptation. They look at these exactly same sins the way angels would look at the sins, objectively, but without being affected. And how come they are not affected? Because they do not realize. They know, but they do not realize the sins. Now let us go to anger and try to see how the natural man reacts to anger and how one guided by divine revelation reacts. When a natural man experiences injustice, his knowledge perceives the injustice, and his feeling immediately reacts to the injustice by means of showing anger. That is the natural man. Let us look at a man guided by divine revelation. Let us look at 2 degrees of religiosity. The lower one, like the natural man, perceives the injustice. He reacts with anger, but he finds it his Christian duty to repress the anger. Now that's good, but not good enough. One who is really guided by divine revelation, if somebody does an injustice to him, he does not even consider it as an act of injustice. For him, there was no injustice done, and so there is no reaction of anger. In fact, if you talk to him, you would be surprised because he would behave in a strange manner, in a different manner, in an out-of-the-world manner, because he would be behaving as if no injustice was done whatsoever. This is the behavior of a person who truly is guided by divine revelation. This is the reason why a Christian is always misunderstood, like Christ himself was misunderstood, because his ways are not natural. His behavior goes against everything that is reasonable and every natural feeling that is common to man. But know that the saints and the religious man speak about things that are not understood by men. They speak with a language that is unknown to most men, because their conversation is with Christ in heaven. His life is hidden with Christ in heaven. And so these saints sometimes are forced to put a veil before their face, as the Holy of Holies on earth had a veil, because his way of doing things is a great mystery before the eyes of the world. Living by divine revelation is what gives the saint that unearthly character, which is a reflection of heaven. He is a mystery to all men, a sacrament. It is the sacrament of the presence of God here on earth. God bless you.